Merryn loved the sea. She loved the sound of the waves calling to her through her window. She dreamt every night of the mysteries that lay beneath. Her father was a fisherman. Each day he went out to sea, and each night Merryn waited at the rocky cliff edge, holding up a candle to guide him safely home. The two of them were poor. Their roof was leaky, and they sometimes went hungry. But as long as they had each other, Merryn knew they would be okay. At night, her father sang her songs about his great adventures. He sang of giant leviathan serpents, haunted caves, and a lost city of gold beneath the sea. Merryn knew the stories weren't real, but she loved to listen to them. She drifted off to sleep, imagining the wonders of the world below. And her life continued that way, simply and happily. Until one night, her father didn't return. Merryn held up her candle at the cliff's edge all through the night, staring out at the empty sea. She shivered in the cold wind as she watched for him all the next day. Her eyes welled with tears as night fell again and there was still no sign of her father. At last, she collapsed into sleep. In her dreams, she saw him, trapped deep beneath the sea, calling to her for help. She awoke with a jolt. A desperate and dangerous plan was already forming in her head. She took scraps of metal and wood her father had caught in his nets and pieced them together. She hammered and bolted, she measured and sawed. And before the sun had set, she had built a tiny, rickety submarine. With trembling hands, she squeezed inside and dove down beneath the waves to search for her father. According to her father, the Guardians had been built by ancient undersea explorers called the foray. Merryn always thought the foray were a myth. Was that a Merrow maiden swimming through the ruins? A glowing swirl in the water tugged at Merryn's sob. Was this a Tyne vortex? Where might it lead? At last, the Merrow maiden stopped. Merryn called to her. "Please wait. I'm only trying to find my father." The Merrow looked at her for a long moment, then stirred the water with her hands, forming a ghostly image. It was the sunken ship graveyard known as Skeleton Reef. Could her father be trapped there? The Merrow pointed the way to go, and Merryn thanked her. To go, Merryn asked the Merrow her name. "Call me Cara," she said. "Another girl once called me that, years ago. She said it means friend." Froze as she saw a foray sentinel ahead of her. Of all their creations, the sentinels were the ones Merryn feared the most. There were once thousands of these unmanned vessels, patrolling every inch of the sea. They collected what was valuable to the foray and destroyed what was not. And so they might continue, following their sleepless patrols until everything under the sea is silent and still. As Merryn entered the Watcher's lair, she saw a wriggling cocoon stuck to the wall. Her heart raced. Could that be her father? Merryn entered the Watcher's lair. She saw a wriggling cocoon stuck to the wall. Her heart raced. Could that be her father? Her heart sank. It wasn't her father inside. Just a funny-looking little sea serpent. A baby leviathan. The little serpent swam around in circles, waving its tail as if to say, "Thank you." Merryn tried to shoo it away, back to wherever it lived. But the odd little creature just followed her. As Merryn approached the gate of the Forbidden City, the clockwork seahorse warned her to stay away. But she had come this far and would not turn back, regardless of the danger that lay ahead. As the gate to the city opened, Merryn was ambushed by foray sentinels. Before she could react, they launched their torpedoes at the defenseless clockwork seahorse. Merryn watched in horror as its gleaming golden body was blasted into pieces that fell, lifeless and dull, to the sea floor. Blinded by rage, Merryn turned back to face the deadly sentinels. The forbidden city of the foray glistened with immeasurable riches. This was the lost city of gold from her father's songs. But where were the foray? Back out into the sea and toward her father's boat. Enormous red tentacles grabbed her submarine, cracking its hull and crushing its propeller. The unseen beast pulled her down into the darkest depths and left her at the bottom of a deep, rocky trench. Her submarine broken, Merryn sat helplessly at the bottom of the sea. She opened her father's journal. On the last page, he had written a note to her. Her hands trembled as she read it. My dearest Merryn, I now realize I may never see you again, and I feel that I have failed you. I'm sorry for all the times you went hungry. I'm sorry I could not buy you pretty dresses and paints and books of your own. I wish I could have given you a happier life. Please know that I love you more than all the world. Merryn put down the journal, and her eyes blurred with tears. She didn't want pretty dresses or paints. She had a happy life, and she just wanted it back. For the first time since her journey began, Merryn had lost hope. She felt the slow, dull realization that her father was truly gone. She watched as the water seeped in through the cracks in the submarine's hull. She could no longer will herself to go on. As the cold water slowly rose up around her, there was a tapping sound from above, and the hatch creaked open. It was Swish. He gently picked Merryn up and pulled her out of the trench. He carried her out of the Forbidden City, through caverns and caves she had never seen, until they reached a place so beautiful that Merryn was certain she must be dreaming. At last, Merryn had reached her destination, the lair of the Rumorosa. She had prepared herself to face anything, and still she wasn't ready for what she saw next. There, trapped inside a diving bell but still alive, was her father. As its mechanical faceplate shattered, the Rimorosa was at last free from the Fomori's control. The creature swooped out of its lair, smashing through the columns of rock beneath the Forbidden City. The heavy city began to collapse under its own weight and fall down into the trench below. Merryn raced to free her father from the diving bell, but the collapsing city was falling down all around her. Merryn grasped her father's hand as an avalanche of debris plummeted toward them. She closed her eyes as the darkness fell over her. When she opened her eyes, there was a roof of green, gleaming scales above her. A giant queen leviathan had taken the brunt of the blow from the falling debris. A moment later, a much smaller serpent swam down toward her. It was Swish. "Is this your mother, Swish?" Merryn asked in astonishment. But Swish just wagged his tail and beckoned for her to grab on. She and her father grabbed hold of the two leviathans, and together they swam up, out of the still collapsing debris of the Forbidden City. They swam out of the darkness and into the gleaming rays of sunlight that streaked through the water's surface. And at last, for the first time in what seemed like ages, Merryn and her father looked out over the waves toward their house in the distance. They said goodbye to the pair of leviathans, and Merryn promised to come play with Swish each day in the deep waters below the cliffs. And bit by bit, Merryn's life slowly went back to normal. She and her father traded a few of Merryn's golden coins for a beat-up old fishing boat. Working side by side, they soon had it ready to sail. Merryn no longer had to wait at the cliff's edge. Her father took her out to sea whenever she wanted to go. As they fished, they shared the stories of their own great adventures, both knowing that every word was true. And sometimes, late at night, Merryn thought of all the mysteries she had yet to answer. She thought of Cara, the sea garden, the eggs, and hoped they were all safe. Someday, she thought, someday I will see them again.